it's nice that my family, the children are close. We can have them over to the house and stuff. And our oldest, Grace, we were just talking about her childhood, and she came right out and verbalized. She said, I had a great childhood. So I think the fact that I was raised in kind of that absentee father home and making a conscious effort to not repeat that, I can see the results.
So this is a first for the podcast. Ben is out right now doing his new job and doing all the different things that involves. So he's going to be hit and miss and busy for the next couple of weeks. So we thought that it would be fun to bring on a guest co-host. And you've heard about this guy on the podcast before. He's somebody that we mention on a pretty regular basis. He's a good friend of Ben and I's. And today we've got Joe Young on the podcast. Joe, I'm really excited to hang out and talk. I want to learn more about you and your past and everything like that. Ben gives you all the time for being old. It's like the running gag of like, you're the old man at Jiu-Jitsu, the old man in the group of friends that we all have and everything like that. And I know that, how old are you really? Like, I know you're not that old. I think it's pretty asinine that he gives you as much shit as he does. But you're like in your 60s or
I'm
something.
I'm 60.
Right? Yeah, that's
I'm
not
the
old at all.
last year of the boomers, 1964.
Last year of the boomers?
Yeah.
See, that's not old. I feel like...
I don't feel old.
Yeah, right? I just turned 44. I did 44 this year. And I don't feel 44 at all. I don't think it's, I don't think it's old by any means. I'm excited to see what 50 looks like. I'm excited to see what 60 looks like. I think anymore, like in today's culture and society and everything like that, it seems like age is way different than it was. Like, have you seen all of those memes where they're like, they show the cast of Cocoon, like Wilfred Brimley was 38 years old or something like that.
It's ridiculous.
It's like age is so completely different than it used to be.
I think we figured out longevity. I think exercise, eating right. People have figured it out. I think we're all going to live longer than our parents.
Yeah.
It's just the way it is. And by the way, I feel about 12 mentally anyway. I don't.
Turns out that we weren't all supposed to just be drinking whiskey and smoking all the time, right?
Right. Every commercial said it was healthy. Yeah. I don't know what was wrong with it, but
did you ever smoke back in the day? Were you a
didn't
smoker
smoke
at any given point?
cigarettes.
No,
I did not smoke cigarettes. In college, I probably tried a little alternate smoking, but there's way too many pictures of me just sleeping at parties. It's not a lot of fun when there's 50 people going crazy and you're sleeping on the couch. It just doesn't work out. So.
I wish smoking was it's one of the things that I picked up when I was 18, and it was off and on for several years, but I would have when I say off and on for several years, the truth is it's like once I started smoking, I didn't really stop smoking. I had a couple of years in between that when I was 18, and then we quit in 2018 is when we quit. I don't know what the math is on any of that, but it's one of those things that I miss immensely. And I'm also really grateful that I stopped. Like we stopped right before COVID.
Yeah.
And when COVID happened, Steph and I were talking about how glad we were that we had stopped smoking, because that time period would have just been like prime smoking time. Because obviously we were just sitting around doing
hanging
nothing,
around. Exactly.
Stressing out. But
exactly right. No, I just never picked it up.
It's probably for the best.
Yeah.
Where did you grow up? Like, where were you born and raised?
So I was born and raised in northwest part of Wisconsin, a town called Eau Claire. It's probably 100,000 now. Mayo Clinic has moved in there, but at the time I lived there, it was maybe 50,000 people. But it was the biggest city in the northwest part of Wisconsin. So,
born in 69?
1964.
64.
Yeah.
What was that like? Like, take us back to that time frame. What stands out from childhood for you?
My gosh. Well, we lived in this old Victorian, huge home. I'm the youngest of 7.
Oh, wow.
So,
brothers, sisters?
Big family. Yeah, there were 3 boys, 4 girls.
Okay. What's the stretch between them all?
18 years.
Oh, okay.
So, the oldest sister, it went 2 girls, 2 boys, 2 girls, and then a boy. And I'm 8 years younger than my closest. So I was a little bit of probably an accident.
Yeah.
I don't know. But, we could go anywhere in that. It was a small enough town, I think, that It was just free reign. I was just running, biking. There was a river near us. That was usually off limits, but that didn't matter. We would go there anyway.
Yeah.
Hang out, get in trouble. It just feels like life was simpler. There was no internet. There was no cell phones. Everything was pretty simple.
When you look back and you think about it, like recently I had this, I don't want to call it a memory, even though, I mean, that's technically what it was, but I tend to think of memories different now than I used to. But I was remembering what it felt like to swing as a kid, like being on a swing and just that sensation of back and forth and how much like freedom it felt, how amazing it felt, and all those kind of different things. But it was very much that kind of same thing where I grew up in a small town where we could just run around and play all day long. Like you basically had free reign to hop on your bike and go wherever you wanted to go and do whatever you wanted to do.
It's funny you bring up swinging. That triggered a memory. We had a swing set.
Mm-hmm.
There's a huge oak tree in our backyard. And if I was swinging and closing my eyes, I would get the checkerboard, sunshade
Yeah,
effect.
yeah.
I just love that. I can feel it now. Just that you brought that up. That's amazing.
Yeah. What were your parents like? What was your relationship with them? Was it pretty typical? Mom stayed home and dad was out working, or?
No, they were dual. They both worked. So my dad worked full time. My dad has a history. We can get into that, but he was a World War II POW. He was shot down in a B-17 over the country of Hungary and spent some time as a guest of the Germans. And then when he came home, my mom had been working. So there was a Unaroyal plant in my hometown that had been converted to a munitions plant.
Mm-hmm.
She was working there. So after World War II, they got together and decided to start having a family. So I think my dad, to some degree, had some PTSD. But anyway, he transferred from being in the Army, Air Force at the time, Army Air Force, to working full-time for the Wisconsin National Guard. And he did that for over 20 years. Mom was more of a secretarial. She worked at a company that sold like sewing materials, like needles, thread, that kind of stuff for commercial use.
Mm-hmm.
So they were out of the house. So a lot of times I would get home. They weren't home yet or whatever. But it was pretty traditional. We usually had sit-down meals when we could, and church on Sunday. Pretty normal upbringing. I think holidays were chaotic because we're a huge family.
Yeah.
And once my siblings started getting married and having kids, it was an event.
It gets even crazier.
Yeah. We broke a couch one year trying to do a family picture. It was a little off the chain.
I would love to hear more about your dad's experience. Was he able to share much with you about that growing up, or was it later on in life when?
Quite a bit. I mean, I don't have all the details, but basically he got into the war a little late. And basically the B-17 crew he practiced with had to fly to Africa and then over to Europe.
And is the B-17, is that like the big bomber that they would fly?
It was the 4-engine, had 10 crew members.
Okay.
Used a lot in Europe. I think, don't quote me on this, but I think the B-24 was used more in the Pacific theater. B-17 was more European theater.
Okay.
But don't quote.
We won't fact check you.
Yeah, thank you. So the crew he trained with ended up flying to Africa and then over to Italy. Foggia, Italy is where they flew out of. On their first mission, the plane was absolutely destroyed. There were some of the crew members that died. So they split them all up. So he ended up on a different crew than he had trained with once he was in Europe. The plane, if I remember right, was called the Ruptured Duck. They all had names.
Yeah.
So at the time, and initially they had to do 25 missions, successful missions, and then they could go home. Later in the war, they moved that up to 35. But on their 25th mission, I think they were trying to hit an oil field in Poland. And on the way in, they start throwing flak up.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the worst part of it, I guess, that last run. You have to stay level and where you're at. And they're just throwing flak in the air. 2 engines were knocked out. So they couldn't stay with the formation, and they basically started dropping out. And the pilot at the time was thinking, well, let's make Russia because they're our allies. History proves out that would not have been a good idea if they actually made it. The Russians were not being real nice to...
Real accommodating.
Not at all. Stealing everything you had, and you were probably going to starve to death. But so somewhere on Hungary, the country of Hungary, the pilot, my dad was the radio man, so he kind of communicated with all the internal crew and the externally as well. Pilot radios back and says, my dad's name was Dwayne. He said, Dwayne, you got to tell him we got to go. We got to get out. So 10 of them strapped up and jumped out.
Oh my
of
goodness.
the plane. And the interesting story, so they land, it's still daylight. My dad landed near some woods and kind of ran into these woods and just made tracks all over he ran every different direction, ran in circles, ran all over the place. Finally, he circled this tree a bunch of times and climbed up in it. So sure enough, they had seen the plane go down. So a couple of soldiers come into the woods and they're following these tracks all over the place. My dad, of course, is sitting in this tree with his bomber jacket and his 45 pistol, but he's also hundreds and hundreds of miles behind enemy lines.
Yeah. How old was he at the time?
18
oh
years
my
old.
God.
Yeah. Crazy.
Yeah, I can't even imagine that.
Oh, nuts. So I guess these guys walked around that tree a bunch, and then they split up and went opposite directions. And when they met each other, they just naturally looked up, and there he was. He just gave up.
Yeah.
But then they kind of marshaled them all together. They knew there were 10 men on a B-17. There was only 9 of them. So they grabbed my dad, I guess, and they dragged him. They didn't speak English. So they dragged him over to a wagon. And the 10th crew member was in that wagon, and his parachute hadn't opened. So what they speculated is flak got into the parachute somehow, destroyed its mechanisms, and it just didn't deploy.
Yeah.
So they lost a man. So then he just spent the rest of the war. At the time in that war, they were trying to stay in front of the American advancement, so they marched them very often. So they kept going from prison camp to prison camp to prison camp. He said that was the worst because they didn't have any food. So at night, they would set him down in a field, and if it was a farmer's field, they'd crawl out and dig up potatoes or rutabagas or night crawlers.
Yeah,
and that's kind of how they survived. But then he remembers Victory Day. Patton came through the gate on a horse, his white horse, General Patton. My dad, he couldn't hardly say the man's name without tearing up.
Yeah.
He just loved General Patton.
How long was he a POW for?
It was 3 to 4 months, maybe 3.5 months, because it was late in the war.
Okay.
So it wasn't too long, but it was long enough that there was some suffering. They were hungry. Even the German soldiers at the time, most of the guards were just young boys and old men.
Yeah.
And they were starving too. It was not good for either side.
What do you think, like, when you look back about that? And first off, I mean, that's just an incredible story, right? The idea that took place in our history. I mean, obviously war is taking place all the time in our history still, but those periods of time, like, I can't even imagine being 18 years old and having to go through something like that. Do you know what I mean?
Not a chance.
Yeah. That's just insane.
At 18, I was pretty irresponsible,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Totally.
What was the effects, you think? Like, did it ever show up in your guys' life growing up? Did he struggle a lot with anything, or was he pretty well? How did he manage it?
I would say he was a functioning alcoholic. He definitely had an issue with alcohol.
Do you think it was in connection with that time period?
Absolutely. I think so.
Yeah.
One of my sisters became a therapist, and after many years of school, and I've talked to her many times about it. And he was definitely suffering from PTSD. I mean, that was a really traumatic event.
For sure.
it affected him. He was an awfully quiet guy, wasn't the authoritarian, just made sure he supported the family, but just kind of let things roll.
Yeah. So what happens? You grow up in, tell me again, Wisconsin, in the middle of, what was the town called again?
Eau Claire.
Eau Claire.
That stands for clear water, but I'm not sure if that's French or if it's Indian. I don't know.
Did you go to college?
I did, and I went to a 2-year tech school in my hometown. It was called Chippewa Valley. I just got a 2-year degree in programming, and I used that for 10 years. I did it the hard way. I went back to college after having children. So I ended up getting a bachelor's degree at a school in Milwaukee, a private school in Milwaukee, and then I turned around and chased a master's degree in project management, all while having a family. So I did not do it. I wouldn't recommend it to any of my children. Do it that way.
And when did you get, I want to know more, Joe. Let's get into the details of, what was young Joe's life like? What took place prior to marriage, all these kind of different time periods in your life?
Well,
if you had to pull out some stories of moments that shaped you as a man and shaped your life, what are some pivotal moments that you can think of over the course of your life that really stand out as far as
Well, I can say one thing so early on in elementary school, maybe I was 8 or 9 or 10, my family decided to lease this little tiny cottage on a lake. It was only about 5 miles from our house, right? It was just a 2-room thing. It didn't have any running water. It had an outhouse. It did have power, but it was right on the water. And I'll tell you, that became the center for 4th of July, for every holiday. Everybody would come back, and we would have, there'd be 50 of us just having a blast. So I think that I really enjoy social activities and being around a lot of people. And I'm sure that was instrumental in developing that in me. I mean, we would come up with, the stories are ridiculous. We would nail chairs to water skis and ski across the lake sitting in a chair. We'd had 2 boats, so sometimes the skiers would switch boats and, cross under each other.
Yeah.
We just had so much ridiculous stuff going on. It was so comical. There was this guy that had a cottage next to us, an old guy, and he would sit and smoke his pipe out on his dock. He'd been some kind of an engineer, but he was retired. Anytime we were doing one of these projects, and we would run into a snag, we wouldn't, what are we going to do with this? How are we going to do this? And all of a sudden, this man would appear with something, either a tool or who knows, a screw or a wedge or whatever. And it would just sort of appear. And he would put it down and walk away. I guess years later, we talked to one of his kids, and they said he would tell the stories about what was going on at the Young's cottage to everybody. He's like, you would not believe what these yahoos were doing this time. He loved it.
Yeah, I bet.
Just loved it. But that was a huge part of our, my growing up. And holidays were huge. The same. Christmas, Easter, Thanksgiving was always a big deal. Just a lot of people around, a lot going on. So I think that shaped my love for just being with people and just being busy and doing things. My dad and mom always did promote, saving and working hard. And I remember as a teenager, I wanted to go to this football camp. A bunch of my buddies were going to a football camp.
Mm-hmm.
It was about, at the time, it was $400. It's a lot of money. I had about 3 paper routes in the morning before school. So I was saving lots of money, and I ended up paying for that myself. That was a big, kind of a lesson from my parents.
Yeah.
Like, look, you get up every morning at 5, you do 3 paper routes before school. Look what you're able to do. You went to this.
That's a big chunk of change for a kid to save up.
Oh, man, it was. Yeah, it felt tough spending it, but it was a good lesson in saving. So, I think I had my first paper out at 12. I just had always kind of been working.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was just something our family, we weren't affluent or well off. So, I mean, there wasn't a lot of extra. You worked hard, and we always ate. So
Today's episode of the podcast is brought to you by Woolly. Most fabrics today are packed with synthetic materials and microplastics that shed off into the environment as well as into your skin.
And that's why we love Woolly, because their gear is made with natural merino wool. No synthetics, no microplastics, just high performance, sustainable clothing that's going to keep you comfortable any season.
Woolly's merino wool is breathable, moisture wicking, and built to last. Plus, it's naturally odor resistant, which means you can wear it longer and wash it less.
And right now, Brave Men Dare listeners, and I'm talking about you guys, can get an extra 15% off. So check out the link down in the doobly-doo. Make sure you use that promo code BRAVE, all caps, when you're checking out of getting some of that fresh, high-quality woolly gear.
Woolly. More wool, less plastic.
that's kind of
Yeah,
what
I
it
think
was.
about that a lot of times too, where it's like, because we didn't grow up wealthy by any means. Always had a roof, always had food, all those kind of things. And I think about all the things that I had to not necessarily do without, but just the way that you figure out how to get things done with what you've got. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely.
And it's like, I had two older brothers too, and the vast majority of all of my clothes up until I was probably in, 10, 12 years old were just hand-me-downs from what they had before. And my mom made a lot of our clothes as well. So she didn't, she was a really good seamstress. And so she would go buy fabric and then make us clothes and shirts and everything like that. So I'd had not just like hand-me-downs, but handmade hand-me-downs from my older brothers for the majority of my childhood until, like I said, it was like junior high school. And then it was like, I got to get something else, Mom. We got to get, I can't be wearing their clothes all over the place again, but.
Right. I remember doing some of that. I had two older brothers, but they were quite a bit older than me. So wasn't a ton of hand-me-downs, but there were times.
Yeah.
That's what you had.
When did you meet your wife?
Wow, I was in my 30s already. So I spent a lot of years just kind of working and playing sports.
Oh yeah, that's what else I was going to ask you. So did you play football in high school?
Played football and basketball in high school. Not beyond it, and play in college or anything, but I've always played intramural basketball and volleyball ever since then. I was pretty active in sports. And I don't know, maybe it's my parents' relationship. I'm not really sure, but I didn't have the greatest role models. So I was definitely a late bloomer. I was not thinking about marriage and things for many years. So I met Monica.
Was it like just not even on your mind in a sense? Like, were you dating? Were you thinking about it? Or was it just not? Because I think there's some people that, in our culture, it's such a, that not the stereotype, but like the story of like you graduate from high school, you go to college, you get married. Like it's really focused on relationships and getting into relationships. And that's the path to not just success and happiness, but like, that's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to do this thing where you get married and the whole 9 yards, right? Especially back in the time frame that you were coming up and
Right.
that whole generation and that whole era. I mean, that's the path to what you're supposed to be doing. So was it something that really weighed a lot on your mind? Was it present, or were you just like, yeah, out of sight, out of mind? I was doing my own thing. I wasn't really thinking about it.
Absolutely. It did not cross my mind. I was dating. I would date. But it just never went beyond that. And, then you'd end up after a few years breaking up with someone and getting involved in another relationship. It just kind of went on that way for many years. So I'm trying to think. So Monica's 7 years younger than I am. And I was working as a programmer at this adhesive company in Milwaukee. And she came in kind of in a HR intern capacity. And I was interested, and I just kind of started working my angles. And here we are today. But I was probably 33, maybe, something like that. We were married. I was 35 when we got married.
Did you guys have kids right off, or?
Absolutely. My oldest daughter, Grace, just turned 25. She was born April 3rd. And our 1 year anniversary is April 17th. So
okay.
it was fast.
Did you always want to be a dad?
No, I was afraid of that.
Yeah.
I didn't think I had the capacity to know how to do it, really, honestly. It was pretty scary.
Yeah. That's something that I've been sitting with a lot lately is I have this, because I'm constantly unpacking like programs. The way that I think of it is it's just these different programs that I'm given, right? They come from mom and dad. They come from society. They come from just life itself. All these things and these stories that I have about myself and the way life's supposed to be and how things are supposed to go and how I think about myself in relation to other people and to the world at large and everything else like that. So I'm just constantly trying to peel back the layers of these programs that I have. And lately, and it's directly in conjunction with obviously being a dad and raising kids and everything like that. But my son, he's 18, and I find myself in this predicament oftentimes where I have a lot of anxiety interacting with him because I'm afraid of the conflict that will take place or that could take place. That moment of like him not wanting to listen to me, or, you know, just the pushback that an 18-year-old will do with their parents, which is totally normal.
Right.
It's totally part of the process. But I could feel all my anxiety all the time leading up to those kind of moments, even just like the simplest of things of trying to interact and engage with him, or even sometimes just simply like spending time with him. And I started to look back and see like all these different moments throughout my time as a dad where I could feel similar type anxiety. And I realized that I had a lot of fear about being a dad just in general, where it felt like something that I was always excited to do. Like I had kids really, really young. My oldest is 26 and I was 18. 18 or 19. But so I was excited about having kids and I always wanted to have kids. But at some point along the way, I just realized that, I mean, obviously I didn't know what I was doing. I was figuring everything out, right, as you go along.
Right.
But it's like so much fear around not just fucking up and messing them up and causing hardship and everything like that, but just like the legitimate fear of like, I don't know what to do as a dad. And I don't necessarily know what dads are supposed to do. So it was constantly trying to understand, like, what am I supposed to do in this scenario? What am I supposed to do in this moment?
That's right. Without role models.
Yeah.
I
had a terrible role model as a father.
First of all, yeah, I was afraid that I'm going to screw up these poor little children. But secondly, yeah, I don't even have the model or the template, you know, to your point. What do I do when they do X? I have no idea what the reaction should be.
Yeah.
So
what do you think is your, like, if we look at just the program that you have about being a dad, what are some key things that you can think of that stand out as far as like your program when it comes to being a dad, both positive and negative, some things that maybe you picked up from your dad or from growing up during the time frame that you did?
I think somewhat of a negative is my dad was very passive. And I think I was too passive in my, raising my children.
Mm-hmm.
2 of them are adults now and they have their own children. But
when you say passive, do you mean like not engaged or like?
More like not engaged. I definitely was engaged because I was definitely the Disneyland kind of dad,
Okay.
I was the play guy. Man, we played all the time. More of, I was not the disciplinarian, right?
Okay.
So that's kind of what I mean, I guess, from passive.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't taking an active role if things were going south as much as my wife would and Monica would. So looking back on that now, I think you can still be gentle, humble, but you have to step up in those situations and kind of lay the law down. And I wasn't doing that necessarily.
Mm-hmm. What do you feel like are the negative side effects of that? Like at this point, looking at your kids and seeing how they turned out and or how they're turning out, I guess, right? I think we're never quite done turning out, right? It's this continual process, but.
Well, actually, for the most part, I think they're growing up pretty well.
Yeah.
But I think in order to define a path for children or get them, you have to have some guardrails. You have to be able to steer them in the direction you think they need to go. And if you're not the disciplinarian or too passive, they're not going to respect you. And I think in order to steer a path, there has to be respect, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I can remember, my daughters are in their 20s now. When they were in their teens, they were pretty rebellious. And if I tried to interject at that point, that ship had sailed. I mean, they were like, yeah, whatever, Dad, okay. So through the grace of God, they've worked out just fine. But I think it could have been smoother had I been a little more stern or steady in that area.
What do you think, what else stands out, like some programming that you got for being a dad for fatherhood?
Let's see. Well, that's a tough question. Only because I don't know that I laid out a plan. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I was somewhat reactionary in that I didn't sit down and map it out like, okay, this is how I'm going to parent. It was more reactionary, I guess. This is how
figuring
it worked
it out as it comes,
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. I think I'd always steered towards making sure that they knew I was proud of them, regardless of what happened. You know, I did a lot of coaching when they were younger, some soccer coaching, some basketball coaching, until my daughters rejected it for dance. Then I had to back away. You know, so I was always involved. I was definitely involved. I think that's important. Dad needs to be involved. He needs to be engaged. Yeah, whether it's coaching, whether it's taking part in their activities, meet them where they're at.
Do you think that was directly in connection with how your dad was, or was your dad involved? I guess there's probably the better.
Not
question.
at all.
Not at all. So is that the pushback to that, you think? That you're like, I wanted to correct that as a dad?
I want to correct that because, yeah, for my sporting events and stuff, my mom would go. She would attend even the away games. She'd take the parent bus. My dad usually wasn't there.
I had the exact same experience. Like just the other morning, I was journaling because I was pissed off and frustrated, and I was processing shit. And I've got this, it's kind of the same thing that we're talking about, this program around being a father and fatherhood and all these kind of different things. And my parents got divorced when I was 14, and my dad just kind of disappeared after that. It wasn't like he was, you know, completely gone and we didn't know where he was at, but he wasn't very much in our lives all that much. And during my high school years, I was playing sports. I was playing tennis all the time. And like we went to state every year and competed and took state, and it was a lot of fun, big deal, right? It was a very important thing in my life. And he never would show up to any of those. And it was just like, that sucked. You know, growing up, that was like a terrible thing to kind of have to navigate and experience and just sit with. And I'm still resentful for it today. Yeah. But the outcome is very much like you, where it was like I made a point to be involved with everything that the kids were doing growing up, and coaching soccer, coaching all their different sports, being there at all their recitals, doing all the different things. So it's the correction process that I think happens with some of the negative programming. But one of the things that stands out to me when I think about this is the idea that dads are men in general, right? But I think oftentimes it comes to being a dad because of the idea of the family unit and everything like that, but providing, like it's a dad's responsibility to provide and to make sure that their family has all of their needs taken care of. And I think that's a real, like I look at that, and when I peel back the layers of all of these programs and subconscious programs and stuff like that, the ones that I have the most resistance to are the ones that I try to sit with the most, because I feel like, because it's the whole thing of like, if we look at the idea that it's a man's responsibility to provide for his family, I think that still today there's a huge chunk of society that would not just agree with that, but that would use that as a defining characteristic of what it means to be a man. And we see how people that don't do that are labeled in such a negative way and viewed in such a way, you know, it's like the piece of shit that can't even provide for their family or can't take care of their family and everything like that. And this isn't an argument to be like, well, men aren't supposed to take care of their families, but I think about it just from like a subconscious programming level, where that's where my worth is. That's the only worth and value that I have. And I think that that's probably a big one that my dad suffered from, where to some extent he was, I don't want to say like minimized, but like his worth and value was essentially boiled down to just that. Just as long as you're providing and bringing a paycheck in every week,
Right.
that's the only thing that you actually have that's of value that you can really offer to this family or to your sons, right? And so then I think it becomes a really slippery slope where men think that that's their only worth and value, is what they can provide. And if they're not providing enough, or if they're not even in the space of providing for whatever reason, then they're not worthy of love, happiness. It's like we see the dichotomy there where it's, like I said earlier, where they get such a negative rap for being a deadbeat dad or something like that.
On the other end of that, they could be a workaholic too, right?
Right.
Oh, I'm providing, so I'm doing my thing.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to work.
Yeah.
Whatever, 60-hour work weeks, never see the family.
Yeah.
It's interesting. You triggered a thought. So I used to run a basketball ministry in Milwaukee with a couple of buddies.
Mm-hmm.
And the stories that the kids that we were providing a safe place to come and play basketball. But the story was identical across the board. Usually they were living with single mom, an aunt or a grandma, had no idea where their dad was. And it was an entire room of that.
Yeah.
Just unbelievable what the effect that had on these guys, these kids.
Yeah, I think about the absence of fathers in not just society. I mean, because it's not just the individual. Like I can say, I've had massive detrimental things in my life because I didn't have a real representation of what a healthy male role model was. My dad wasn't really around even before they got divorced. And it was because he was working a lot. But even that, like even when he was around, he wasn't really around, wasn't really present, right? And
Right.
I do think that a lot of that is because of that programming of, that's not necessarily, I mean, obviously that's not how he was raised. His dad did the same thing. My grandfather was a sheriff's deputy with LA County. So he was gone all the time doing that kind of stuff and being the provider there. And I'm sure that came with overtime and everything else of, not ever really being around. So it's less about trying to like blame anybody at this point in my life. I'm just trying to understand how it's all impacting me. And I think about that big role of, not the big role of fathers, but the lack of having fathers present in people's lives and in culture and society, and the like the outcome of that and what it's done to society. Because it's not like, this isn't the whole argument either of like, I don't fall into the camp of it's kids need a male and a female role model in their life. They need their mother and their father in their life. But I do think that regardless of whether or not it's quote unquote a father figure or their father, I think it's important to have masculine male role models in your life that are there consistently. Like I had a lot of male role models growing up, but the consistency wasn't there. They were just men that were in the community.
Maybe
coaches, leaders like that. And so they were there at certain times, and I can see those moments really clearly where I would like gravitate to those men and really latch on to them and want that connection from them. But it was always just bits and pieces. It wasn't a lot. And so I think it's really important to have that positive male role model on a consistent level and on a consistent basis.
I really stand for that. I believe in the nuclear family. I think you need to have that.
When you think about your kids, do you think that, because you said that you were, present, showing up, all those kind of different things, but what were some of the other, I don't want to say, because I hate spinning everything to like the negative side effects, but when we think about being raised by these type of fathers that weren't really present, that weren't really there, that weren't really showing up for us, how do you think that trickled down and affected your kids?
My presence?
Yeah.
Being there? Oh,
not your presence being there, but some of the side effects of being raised by men like that, and then how we ended up raising our kids.
Oh, I see what you're getting at. Yeah. Well, it's interesting. We just had a discussion with we kind of had everybody over. It's nice that my family, the children are close. We can have them over to the house and stuff. And our oldest, Grace, we were just talking about her childhood, and she came right out and verbalized. She said, I had a great childhood. And we were, because she had some troubled teen years.
Yeah.
But her memory is she had a really great childhood. So I think the fact that I was raised in kind of that absentee father home, and making a conscious effort to not repeat that, I can see the result in that discussion we had, and my other kids kind of feel the same. Although my youngest, Eli, doesn't say a lot. You know that. You have a boy. They don't say anything.
Yeah. Whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
How different is it for you raising daughters versus sons?
Well, the biggest difference, so growing up with the two girls at first, right? Grace and Abby, Toy Story kind of came out, and we had those characters, Buzz Lightyear and all that. Those toys went through both those girls without a scratch. Pristine. I could have sold them, as perfect antiques. Eli got a hold of them. They destroyed in weeks. I mean, legs gone, helmet broken. Just so when they're younger, it's a different program.
Yeah.
Boys are destructive. Girls are just not. But then I will say, teen years, girls are tough. Both Grace and Abby put us through the ringer. Eli's super easy.
Yeah.
Just a pretty easygoing kid. Not a lot of trouble.
I think a lot about this because I'm always looking at things too where people are just mirroring stuff for us, right? And it's in our relationships, like with our wives and partners and everything, and then also at large, all the people that we encounter. But it's also really, it's like there's a uniqueness to that mirroring effect that takes place with our kids because they're they're a part of us. It's like literally a part of you comes forth into the magical universe and sits in front of you, and suddenly you're faced with a part of you that you can't really see sometimes or that you're not aware of. And I think a lot of times for me, this is what it's been, where the kids that I would, because we've got 4 kids all together, Steph and I, and the kids that I would butt heads with the most were the ones that I was most similar to. And then the ones that, because it's like each one of them would have issues that would come up between us, like the conflict or just the way that they, your kids have a very special way of pushing buttons, right?
Of course.
They definitely know all of your buttons, but the ones that I butt heads with the most are the ones that are most similar to me. And I have to really sit in that space and reflect on what what buttons they're pushing, because they're the parts of me that I don't really want to look at. And then the flip side of it is the ones that aren't necessarily, I feel like, the most similar to me. I might not butt heads with them the most, but the buttons that they push are the issues that I have with Stephanie. So it's like they're mirroring the part of my partner that I'm triggered by at some point, where they just have this magical way of like getting in there and pointing at the things that you need to look at.
I'd have to process that. I'm not sure.
Yeah. Which one of your kids do you feel like you're most similar to?
Let's see. Probably my middle daughter, Abby.
Yeah.
She's pretty easygoing. A little dramatic here and there. Where my oldest, Grace, she's an audiologist now. We've never had to help that kid with an ounce of homework.
Yeah.
She is driven and going. That is not necessarily my MO. Abby's a little more laid back, hey, life will come, but she does have her highs and lows drama. I'm probably most like her.
Yeah.
Really.
What about Monica?
Oh, she's definitely like Grace.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're both very type A driven women.
So you said you got married when you were 35, is that right?
That's right.
So what is that, 25 years of marriage?
It'll be 26 on Thursday.
Nice.
Yeah.
What's some wisdom that you've gotten over the past 26 years when it comes to, because that's an accomplishment, Joe. Steph and I just had our 10-year anniversary, and I feel proud about that. Like,
that's cool.
It's one of those things where we've been together for 13 years, and it was the funniest thing leading up to it, because today's episode of the podcast is brought to you by Heritage Still. If you're serious about quality in the kitchen, it's time to check out Heritage Still. All their cookware is handcrafted right here in Tennessee.
Heritage Steel isn't just another cookware brand. This is American craftsmanship at its finest, using high-quality, multi-clad stainless steel to give you unmatched durability, precision, and performance. Whether you're searing, sauteing, simmering, or good old-fashioned pan frying, these pans were built to last for generations.
Their cookware is safe for any cooking surface. It's easy to clean, and every piece comes with a lifetime warranty.
And right now, Brave Men Dare listeners, I'm talking to you. You guys can save an extra 10% off. Go over to www.heritagesteel.us/brave. Make sure you use the promo code BRAVE, all caps, to get that extra 10% off at checkout. Upgrade your kitchen with the cookware that's going to stand the test of time.
Heritage Steel, chef-grade cookware for less. We got nervous when it got to our 10-year anniversary. And like when we started acknowledging it and talking about it and then like planning what we were going to do, we noticed that we were suddenly like all anxious and nervous and uncomfortable and like stressing out and fighting more and all of these kind of different things. But it's because we've got, it
triggered it. The milestone triggered that.
Yeah, it's because we come, like our first marriages, we were both married before this one. And each one of those relationships ended right around the 10-year mark. And so it was just that kind of stuff that was coming up for us. But it was really funny because we were like, this is supposed to be a positive thing. We're supposed to be excited about this. And it ended up being great and everything like that. But what is some wisdom that you feel like you've gotten over the past 26 years of being married? Because that's an accomplishment. Like I said, I mean, that's something that you should feel proud about. It's a hard thing to do.
Yeah. Well, we, I think over the years, everybody has had their arguments, but we have definitely blended to a more middle ground with each other. I'm pretty social and Monica's much more introverted.
Mm-hmm.
I think over the years we have, initially I think there was some issue there, right? If we were at a party or something and it was time to go, I've got the traditional, I don't know if you've ever heard of the Wisconsin goodbye, but a Wisconsin goodbye usually takes about an hour and a half. Because you've got to say goodbye
Stephanie
to everybody.
must be from Wisconsin.
You have to say goodbye to everybody. And if somebody offers you one more, you got to have that.
Yeah.
You can't just, come on, you can't be rude. So, I would be doing the Wisconsin goodbye and she's at the front door going, really?
Yeah.
We said we were going to leave an hour ago. Like, oh yeah, okay, we'll go. So we've definitely blended, I think, a little more. I understand that when it's time to go, I don't need to necessarily say goodbye to everybody. And she realizes we don't just have to do the Irish exit. We can. So, I think in many of those areas, we've just kind of come to middle ground and it becomes easier over time. There's not a lot of big date nights and stuff, but we take walks almost all the time. We walk the dogs probably daily.
Mm-hmm.
That's time when it's just us two, usually with the dogs or whatever. You can have a lot of conversations, open communication during those small little, we kind of refer to them as dates, even though they're just an activity, right? Hey, we're taking the dogs for a walk or going grocery shopping. We use those opportunities to reconnect. Lately, work's been really busy for me. She's busy homeschooling Eli, and she also takes care of one of our grandchildren a couple days a week, and the other one's over pretty regularly. So we use those opportunities.
She's got to love that.
Oh, she loves it to a point. After about 3 days, she's like, wow, this is a young person's game.
Yeah.
It's tiring, but they're incredible. We love them. But so I would say words of wisdom is it doesn't have to be a big event, like a big, we've got to go for dinner. We've got to do, go to a party. We've got to go to some event. Little dates, just a walk or or just hanging out. You know, we hang out by our pool together just to get some vitamin D and just that togetherness. It doesn't have to be a big event. So
Yeah.
I think in general, if you have those expectations, you're going to be disappointed a lot because you can't always plan for those. You can't always have time for that. So you need to carve out those little moments just to be together and reconnect.
Do you feel like you guys have had, because I think about this with Steph and I, where it's almost like, you know, we're different people than when we met, and it's constantly, it feels like we're changing and evolving and kind of becoming different versions of ourselves as time goes by. Do you feel something similar where you guys are not just different people, but like, what has that looked like over the course of your relationship? Has it seemed like there's been a lot of change and growth in who you guys are and your relationship, or pretty homeostasis the whole time?
I think it has. And I mean, part of that could be as you get older, you just get, you learn, you become a little wiser. So I think initially, I mean, two people coming together that have been single, you know, there can be some narcissistic tendencies, right? You know, I want it my way, you want it your way. But I mean, after 26 years, you figure out that, you know what, it can't always be my way. It can't always be their way. Let's find that middle ground. So I think there's been a lot of growth in that area. Absolutely. Yeah, I guess that's how I feel about that. I think you just grow. It's sort of like on the job training, right?
Yeah.
You just, you know, something that may have triggered us 20 years ago wouldn't even blink an eye today.
Do you guys still have some sticky spots where there's like things that you don't, like Steph and I have a group of things that we know we don't go towards. Like we did an episode of the Steph and Craig show where we talked about having these metaphorical boxes in our closets that we don't, you know, we've been hauling them around and carrying them around with us our whole relationship. Right. And we don't really unpack them anymore. And we know to just like, don't go towards those, put some blankets over top of them. We don't want to look at that shit, because every time we try to unpack it and address it, it just dissolves into chaos in a sense where we can't really ever come to terms about it. And one of us ends up getting hurt feelings and all those kind of different things. Do you guys have any of those type of issues still after 26 years?
You know, after 26 years, I would say that a lot of those boxes, as you say, are well aligned. I mean, our faith is well aligned. Our philosophy on our children is well aligned. I think social activity is probably still one of those areas where, you know, we've learned to, we've evolved and we've dealt with it, but it can cause friction at times. You know, if I could go every day, let's go, let's do this. Hey, there's this thing over here. There's this going on over here. I can, you know, Monica can do a few of them, but then she's like, listen, I need to decompress. You're going 100 miles an hour here.
Yeah.
So, but I think knowing that, to your point, I don't know that we unpack that.
Right.
You know, if there's 3 things in a week and we do 2 of them, if I really want to do the third one, I may do it alone, or I may decide that, you know, maybe we'll just stay home. So.
What do you feel like she has taught you about yourself?
Taught me about myself. That's a good one. I think due to her support, she's pretty supportive, right? So I think maybe early on in my life, I had definitely would say I probably had some self-esteem issues, insecurity around my abilities. She's been pretty supportive over the year. I mean, she supported me as I was pursuing, you know, college degrees while we were raising a family. Supported me through job changes and job difficulties. I think through her kind of being in the background and pushing, I guess, if you're not pushing, but supporting, I think I've figured out over the years that, hey, I can do this. I've got it. You know, it's not going to, how do I put this? I've said it to Eli a few times. If he's concerned about a work thing and he's got to talk to a boss or something, he said, what's the worst they can do? They can't eat you. So, I guess she's kind of taught me that, we can get it done.
Yeah.
We can work hard and we'll get it done. And just, there might be bumps along the way, but in the end, it'll probably work out.
I would agree. I think that's one of the things that Steph has taught me. And I would frame it around, she's taught me how to love myself much better based off of how she loves me. Like some of the things that she's been able to love me through and consistently show up and be there for me. It's just it's almost like I have that because this goes back to some of the subconscious programming stuff that I was talking about earlier, where I've got this subconscious program that I'm unlovable. The people that, were supposed to love me didn't really love me, and nobody really loves me. Nobody wants to be around me, and nobody really wants to spend time with me. So that's the base programming of Craig that I'm constantly trying to get away from. But then also because it's subconscious, then I'll just see it everywhere and reflect it back everywhere. And so I see this play out in all of my relationships, and she just keeps showing up consistently over and over and over and over and over again. And eventually getting to that spot where it's oh, wait a minute, maybe I am actually lovable. Maybe I am actually worth something. Maybe lovable. I do have some value and worth that I can bring to a relationship and to the world and things like that.
Isn't that nice when you have the companion that does that for you? I mean, the sky's the limit.
Yeah, it really does make a big difference. I want to ask you some more too, because, gosh dang it, there was another question that I had about relationships. Oh, shoot, Joe, it was a good question too. I don't know if it's going to come back. That's okay. We'll see if it'll come back.
It might come back to you.
Yeah, well, hopefully.
Yeah.
How have you, you're on the precipice of retiring and your life is changing up, and you just became a grandfather. I think about this too, where life is in these chunks of time, right? You've got childhood, you've got adolescence and teenage and your 20s and all these kind of different periods of time in your life that feel different. Mm-hmm. As you're transitioning into this new phase of life, you're going towards, and I might be putting words in your mouth or in my mouth, I don't know, but it feels like that transition from going, you just became a grandfather, you're getting ready to retire. It's you're now facing the next phase of life. Does it feel like that?
Oh, absolutely. Monica and I are having a lot of these discussions because, like most of us, right? You spend your entire career saving. Well, now what do you do with it? So we've been having a lot of these discussions about the future. Matter of fact, we just met with a financial advisor friend of ours just for that reason. We're we talk in concept about retiring, but what does that really mean?
Yeah.
What does a fixed income really mean? What is, I've been putting this money away in this coffer, this bucket. How do you get it out of there? What do you do?
Yeah.
So it's a big transition right now. And we're talking, I'm not sure the exact timing yet, but a few years. I mean, Eli's 17. We'd like to get him to at least to adulthood and something beyond that. But I mean, even our daughters, we're still kind of parenting, I guess, if you will. Yeah. They're married. They have their own child, but
still an active role in their life.
Yeah. So it's
Are you excited about the next phase? Is there a part of you that's, looking forward to it?
I'm super excited about it. I am. I've heard stories of people that retire and they sit down and a few months later they pass away or whatever. Mm-hmm. I'll fill every minute, I think. It's just my personality, I mean, at Jiu-Jitsu, I'll be there all the time, probably. We'll be traveling. I'll be biking. I just, skateboarding. I have so many things I want to do. And of course, I want to, probably spend a little more time helping out at our church. I just don't want to, it's not all about fun and play. I still want to have a purpose.
Yeah.
Right. Raising my grandchildren, things of that nature. But I'm going to fill a lot of my day with a lot of activities, I think.
is there something that you wish that you would have done at some point in your life? And it's not necessarily like a job or something like that, but some creative expression, something that, you know, you never got around to getting into this thing or into this hobby that now you're going to have the time and the opportunity to maybe go towards. Is there anything like that coming up?
One of our daughters, all our children have taken piano, and then one of our daughters, Abby, took guitar.
Mm-hmm.
And I would kind of sit in the room, and I was sort of taking guitar lessons as well. It just wasn't an active participant.
Yeah.
I was sort of in the corner kind of doing it. I think I'd love to pick that back up.
I love the guitar.
Yeah. I enjoyed just a little bit I had learned.
Yeah.
And it's great. I just haven't had the time, and now I will. And I think that's one thing I think I'll pick up.
I was thinking about it today, actually, because I'm at this phase of my life where I feel like I just transitioned into some new phase as well. I don't know, you know, if it's the midlife crisis or whatever it is, but it feels like I'm now kind of a little bit over the hump of coming up to it. And now I'm just at the forefront of what this new, whatever the fuck it is. I don't even know what it is, right? It just feels like life is brand new for me to some extent. And a lot of what that looks like for me is just spending my time doing what I want to do. Because I don't want to get to a point in life where there's things that I wish I would have done. And I just want to move through each and every single day, simply doing what I want to do and not looking at it like these are the things that I have to do before I can do the things that I want to do. I'm just trying to do the things that I want to do first and not look at things from that perspective of like, these are the things that I have to do. And my hope is that the things that I want to do just cultivate and create the life that I want to live, right? That's
exactly right.
That's the working hope, at least. We'll see how it goes. It's hard. It's one of those things that I think it goes back to some of that subconscious programming where I have to do these other things before I can do the things that I want. And I'm like, I don't buy that one. But the guitar is one of them. We picked that up during COVID because Fender has a really good online portal for learning and teaching and everything like that. And during the lockdown, they gave it away for free. And so that was one of the things that Steph and I did was get on there. She was taking guitar lessons in person at the time from some lady in town. But obviously when everything happened, then she couldn't go do that anymore. And I was doing the same thing. She'd go take those lessons and then like come home and show me stuff. And I would just be like practicing the different chords and everything.
Pretty much what I was doing.
Yeah.
I was listening to the lesson and then kind of.
But that's so fun. Like I love being able to, when I really drop in and just start dinking around and playing on the guitar, it feels so good. It's one of those things that I'm super passionate about. And I have the story that it's like, I don't have the time for that because I have to do these other things.
Right.
And I'm like,
right.
I get to decide what I spend my time on today. I don't have to do those
I'm ready
things.
for that. I mean, IT. I've been in IT since my first job was January of 1987. So that's many years. I'm with like you, not sure the math yet, but something. It's always kind of felt like a little bit of a square peg in a round hole. It's done very well for me and my family.
Yeah.
But, you know, some of my coworkers, you know, the kid that ripped apart the PC when he was 12 and built his own PC when he was 15. And that's been his life.
Mm-hmm.
I sort of stumbled into it. I went to the local community college and was talking to an advisor, and they gave me one of those personality tests. And they said, well, it seems like you could be an accountant or in this data processing. Whatever the heck data processing. I said, well, I don't want to be an accountant. So I said, I guess I'll go that way. And that was the early IT, if you will. I mean, some of the programs we wrote were on punch cards. So it was early on.
That's crazy, Joe.
Yeah, early on. So,
do you enjoy it?
I do enjoy it. So I shouldn't say, I mean, I say a square peg in a round hole more from, I think I would have enjoyed a different career, maybe something in sports medicine or something, but the reality of it has been great. It's been great for the family. I mean, I've been able to support the family. I've always had work, and I have come to enjoy it. I think it was how do you say that? I organically, I grew into enjoying it.
Yeah.
Just because I started gaining more knowledge and was better at it as I got more experience.
What about emotions? That's another thing that we talk about on the podcast. I try to talk about it all the time. I like talking about it a lot. It's one of those things. It's a passion of mine, learning how to feel and express and connect
from the
to
Midwest,
emotions.
we don't typically do that, right?
You're like, this has been great. This has been real fun. It's let's wrap up this episode. We're time to go. No, it's one of those things that I think men just flat out suck at. And it's not just men. I think it's culture at large. Emotions are one of those things that are really challenging and difficult for everybody to feel. And it's the same thing where we've got these programs and these stories about the safe emotions, the ones that we're okay to feel. This is the question that I was going to ask you about your relationship.
We came around.
Yeah,
full circle.
Here we go.
Beautiful.
So do you feel like over the course of your relationship, does it feel safe to you to push back when it comes to like disagreements and arguments with Monica? Like to go like, because I've been thinking about this a lot where I have like, it's really hard for me I look at it through the lens now of like state a need of mine. Like I have a need that I want, and it's less about like the super narcissistic, shitty guy that's just all about himself and everything's about me. But it's more of like, when Stephanie's doing something that doesn't feel good, or she says something to me that doesn't feel good, or do you know what I mean? Like there's some of these areas where we get into, and it's like, it's going against something that, like, it's a weird thing. I can't even put all of, like, I don't have a full understanding of it yet, because it's just still kind of like, I'm learning about it as I go. It's like you said, it's like learning on the job, right? But it's scary every time I have to like push back against her to some extent, and not in like a terrible forceful way or anything like that, but It's just like, hey, that didn't feel good what you just did. Do you know what I mean? Like call her out in a sense.
Yeah. I think even at 60, and it doesn't happen often, I think what you're describing, I don't know that I have a very mature reaction to. It's probably more of a sulky, maybe, like, like, hey, what are you doing? Leave me alone.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I don't know that I've developed that muscle.
Like when they hurt your feelings, right? And it's one of those things when it's like a one-off and it's an accident and it's like, do you know what I mean?
Right.
And those moments, and then we can kind of laugh about it or something like that, and they apologize. But when it's something that she's doing that she's not aware that she's doing in regards to like, this is hurting my feelings and affecting me, and it keeps coming up, and I'm not saying anything about it, and I have to learn how to like say, hey, wait a minute, that didn't feel good. This is how it made me feel. That spot of contention of like calling that out and pointing at it. I hate it. Like I hate it every time I have to do it. But I've started doing it because the alternative is what it feels like is me like abandoning a part of myself. It feels like I'm not standing up for myself. It's this weird thing that takes place.
You know, it's interesting, after 26 years, I think I've gone through that many times over the years. It feels like we're at a point now where I think we've kind of ironed that out. I think when it does happen, I still react kind of in that immature sort of, hey, you hurt my feelings or whatever, but I can't think of the last time it happened. So I think over the years, we've kind of gotten through those. And it's hard to explain, but at 26 years, it's kind of just, I don't want to oversimplify it and say it's easy, but I mean, relationships are work, but I don't know that we have big peaks and valleys. I think we've become sort of a bell curve, if you will.
Yeah. Does it feel like because I think about this too with Steph and I, where we've gone through quite a bit of healing stuff together, and we still have moments, obviously. And I think that's going to be a process that continues to unfold. But a lot of what takes place now is it just feels like we're riding these emotional waves that happen because of life. And it's less about conflict necessarily within our relationship or between each other. It's just kind of like navigating the natural ebbs and flows of what happens because of life and the
Right.
things that we're going through and navigating.
You know what's funny about that? Monica and I have thought about this. Huge things like back in 2010, I was laid off, and which prompted us to move out to Washington State for another job. But those kind of events, we seem to like Wonder Twins power a little bit and come together and manage them. But it's the thing like we're trying to save money and I want the $5 burger or whatever. That seems to be more difficult than huge events, I don't know, buying a house or building a house has never caused conflict for us, but I would prefer the burger over the whatever can cause conflict. It's interesting.
Yeah.
So the huge hurdles we seem to navigate well. It's tiny little things that now and then will flare up, which I don't know if that's everybody or just how we've developed. I'm not sure.
When you look at like when you paint the picture of Joe and you see yourself today and where you're at in your life, are there areas that you're still trying to, do you have areas of your, not just your life and your relationships and things like that, but I'm always going towards like deeper understanding of who I am and the process of just peeling back layers of Craig and understanding Craig more. And that's me. Not everybody's like that. So I'm going to presume that to some extent you have a little bit of that, because I think self-reflection is one of those things that's fairly normal for people. It's just some people are more interested in it and more reflective, and some people, aren't. But are there areas of who you are that still seem like a mystery to you? Like, do you still have actions and behaviors and thoughts and things like that, feelings inside that come up that you're like, damn it, why do I still do this? Or why do I still feel this way? Or do you feel like you have a pretty good understanding of what makes you tick?
Yeah. I think in general, I'm kind of a 50,000 foot guy. I don't know that I get below the surface a whole lot.
Okay.
But there are areas like, it's interesting. I've been in IT for so long, but if I'm dealing at times with a problem and I'm trying to analyze it, there is anxiety. Like, what if I can't solve this? I'm kind of on the hot seat here. And there's no way, as long as I've been doing this, that I should still have that. Right?
Yeah.
The reaction should be, okay, just give me some time. I'll figure this out. Instead of, oh man, what if this is the one? What if this is the one I can't figure out? And that goes back to, what are they going to do?
Right.
You can't do much, but hey, Joe, figure that out. I don't know. I think that's something I don't spend a lot of time trying to analyze it, because I think for the most part, what usually happens is I'll figure this whatever out and move on to the next issue. But it is funny that at 60 years old, that to me feels like a new programmer reaction, right?
Yeah.
I remember as a new programmer, I would take vacation and I would think, gosh, what if I forget everything by the time I get back? Which never really happened. So now I don't know where that comes from. And I just sort of work through it, I guess. I don't try to figure out where, but
we're gonna talk a little bit about Jiu-Jitsu, because I'm going to use some awareness that I have in rolling with you in Jiu-Jitsu. And I would interpret what you just said through the lens of like Jiu-Jitsu. And I think one of the biggest things that you struggle with in Jiu-Jitsu is just having confidence in yourself, where you're always at this, and I shouldn't say always, like always, but you tend to have a tendency to be really hesitant when it comes to Jiu-Jitsu, when it comes to submissions, when it comes to positioning. It's like I can feel you go towards certain things or go after certain things, but then when the time comes to actually like go, it's like there's that little spot where you're hesitant and resisting. And I don't know if that's like not trusting your skills or like just the unknown of like, I don't know what's going to happen if I do that, but that's kind of what that brought up for me when you were talking about just a little bit of anxiety of like, what if,
Yeah.
You know, the unknown's going to happen. Am I going to be able to deal with it? What am I going to do about it? And jiu-jitsu obviously is a massive unknown the vast majority of the time, right?
It sure is. That is interesting. I talked to Eli about it, jiu-jitsu, quite a bit because it's something we're both doing together. I do spend a lot of time just trying to survive, and I don't know. I think it might be. I don't know if I can put a finger on it. Is it processing speed? Maybe, you know what I'm getting at. Like, you and I have talked about this in that flight or fight, kind of feeling, that mentality. I think when things get going, you know, you got 5 minutes. I'm rolling with you or whoever. You know, even if we just drilled something for 20 minutes, I may not see that opening because it's just, I'm just giving it. I think that's part of the problem. I think I'm still trying to use so much strength and energy that I'm not just flowing and thinking it through.
Yeah.
That's sort of how I've interpreted why I struggle a bit.
It makes me think about what you said earlier about like being a 50,000 foot kind of guy, not really looking at things,
right?
You know, getting closer to things and looking at things in a deeper way, or peeling back those layers a little bit, just kind of staying above things to some extent.
Yeah, I can see. I was trying to think. I was having a discussion with Chris Warner one day. He was kind of laying out his philosophy, and his is more of like a quadrant or not 50,000 feet, but he simplifies it. He breaks it down into, I'm either going to flatten you out or I'm going to take away one of your table legs, you know, and that's kind of what he's always looking for. I think I haven't quite figured that out. You know what I mean? I'm
still just in that survival state.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it is, I've had that discussion with Ben even a few times. It's frustrating to still be there because I feel like I've been doing this a long time now, or well, not as long as some of you, but I you know, 3 years in, I should be, you know.
I mean, you train a lot, Joe. I mean, you're there, you know, how many days a week are you training right now?
Well, Monday, Wednesday, Friday mornings. And I've slowed down a little bit in the evenings. I usually Tuesday and Thursday. And then Friday a little bit, but work's been a little crazy lately, so I haven't been able to do the evenings as much. But I was going 5 days a week for a while. Some days were double sessions. I don't know.
Yeah, I think you got to trust yourself.
Right.
Like it's stepping out of that fight or flight response and realizing that, like, I mean, I tell you this sometimes when we're rolling, it's like you have the skill set, like you have the knowledge. It's there already. I think you're so hesitant to go towards things because you don't want to get caught, or it might be some conscious thing too where you're worried about getting injured or something like that too. But it's like, just trust the skills that you have and know that when you're in those positions, you're going to be fine. It's kind of the same thing, right? You're going to be able to figure it out.
Right. I think it's, you know, I've been tapped so many times. I don't know that it's a fear of that. And as far as hurt, I don't know. I spend most of my time sore. I don't know if I see the opening. You know what I mean? Like for an example, Brad Bradford in the morning. Like I'll open my elbows and he'll see it immediately. I don't know that I'm seeing the open space between the elbow or the back, somebody's back. You know what I mean? I don't know that I'm processing that, hey, there's an opportunity there. And I'm not sure how to make that transition, I guess.
I have a perfect hack for you. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
So what you should do is you should start talking to Monica about this. Do you ever talk to her about jiu-jitsu?
A little, but...
Okay, so let me explain.
I might get glassy eyes. She might just be like, huh?
But talk to her about it through the lens of like, jiu-jitsu is a reflection of life. And I'm finding that in jiu-jitsu, I'm getting to this spot where I should be able to, like, I've got the skill set, I've got the knowledge, I've got the know-how, but I'm not really seeing these opportunities. Like, it's like, you know, just describe what you're experiencing to her from kind of like that intellectual understanding of, like, not necessarily like, you know, don't break down jiu-jitsu for her and be like, when he's got me in side mount and he's doing X, Y, and Z. No, just from
I'll lose her attention
exactly.
pretty fast.
But the idea is she knows you so well. And because jiu-jitsu is such a reflection of how we are in life, she's going to be able to point at it and tell you exactly why you're at, you know, like, why, because it's almost like a plateau. I always think about in jiu-jitsu, we've just got these plateaus of growth, right? You've got these levels and then you plateau a little bit and then you have to get frustrated and then you go up another level and so on and so forth. But she's going to understand you to a certain degree that nobody else does because she's been with you for so long. And so she's going to be able to point out some things and be like, well, it's probably because you do this, this, and this. And I can see how you do this in our life and how you've done this in life. And so then it's just bringing awareness to that. And then you'll be able to fix both of them.
That'd be an interesting exercise to see what
you have to see what she has to say.
See what she says. If I can hold her attention about it long enough. You know, early on, I was like, there's some women doing this. She's like,
yeah.
Joe, I'm in my 50s. I'm not going to go roll around. Okay. I get it.
Yeah, Steph's not a big fan of it either. She enjoys it a little bit, but it's definitely not her jam.
Right.
Joe, this has been wonderful. I'm excited we have to have you come back. I've consciously been trying to think about how to set this space up a little bit differently because I want to have you come back when Ben's here as well. And
that'd be fun.
So we got to bring in some other chair and some other angle and things like that. But it'll be fun to have you come back when Ben's in town and we can all sit down together. So is there anything that you would like to, I don't know if you had things that you want to talk about or anything you wanted to mention or say or questions that you wanted to ask or anything like that?
Well, not necessarily. I just was going to kind of let this roll out the way it was.
Yeah, we do have to mention.
I didn't hardly talk about my mother or mom.
Do you want to talk about moms?
We could. I was thinking about that because I mentioned my dad.
Yeah.
And my parents have pretty interesting backgrounds as well. They were Depression children, of course.
Yeah, see, that's the thing about the baby boomer generation is you guys, I think about that all the time because my parents, I'm trying to think, I think both my parents are right around your age. I don't remember how old my parents are. That's terrible, but they definitely, you know, the generation that raised my parents and how that influenced them, and then so on and so forth. But anyways, go ahead. So your parents were both Depression.
So anyway, interesting. So my dad kind of grew up a farmer, but his background is Cajun. You know how, and I don't know the actual historical event, but at some point in Canada, they kicked the French Canadians out. And many of them went, you were just in New Orleans, many of them went that way, down to Louisiana. Well, there was a whole group that went to Wisconsin as well. That's my dad's background. So he kind of comes from that French Indian or French fur trader kind of background. And they had, you know, they grew up on a farm. They had horse and buggy. They didn't have cars. But my mother's side is very interesting and unique because there is documented direct lineage to the Mayflower.
Really?
So my great 11 generations back, my grandparents met on the Mayflower. John Alden and Priscilla Mullins. So you can look them up. Matter of fact, if you go to up in the Boston area, there's kind of one of these settler colonial settlement kind of museums.
Okay.
And there's actors playing my grandparents.
Really?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
He was a barrel maker. So that was a career then, or a path, right?
Yeah, yeah.
He made barrels. And I guess she was just a homemaker, but they have many children. But just
your roots
like
run
that.
deep, Joe.
Yeah, exactly. I just wanted to make sure. We talked about my dad, so I thought I better talk about my mom, even though they passed away.
Yeah, it's one of those things that I think we don't talk. Truthfully, we don't talk about we did a whole episode once on the podcast where we talked about our dads and the influence that our dads had and all these kind of things. And we talk about masculinity and men's stuff all the time. And so it tends to be in that or in that arena of fatherhood and everything. And we don't talk about our moms, or we haven't talked about our moms yet on the podcast. And truthfully, it's just because I have a bunch of issues with my mom. And so it's an area that's really difficult for me to talk about. But I do think that an interesting thing that I think about, because it was going back to the beginning of the podcast where we were talking about how, the programming that dads have of being providers, and a lot of, even if you had a father figure in your life, like your dad was in your life to some extent, he still was kind of elusive, and he wasn't really directly connected to child rearing and raising, and, wasn't doing a lot of that. And it was really on the impetus, or all of that fell on the mother. And I think that there is something incredibly important to understand about what it is for men to be raised by women, and how much that impacts them in so many different ways. Because there's that missing component of having a father figure in there that is really, really important. And it's not to say that, moms aren't great, and moms can do great, amazing things and all of those kind of things. It's not negating what moms can and do, but it's just like there's something in there about the impact of men being raised by women only, for the majority, not the majority of their childhood, but like that. Yeah, it's a thought that's hard for me to articulate, simply because it's something that I think about often, and I still don't really fully understand all of it. Do you know what I mean? It's like so focused on the missing piece of not having my dad present in my life, and yet not really understanding the role that my mom played in all these different things that shaped and molded me. But
yeah, I get that. I definitely believe that we need that. I guess I'm having trouble describing it like you are. I mean, there's a feminine and masculine component to our makeup, and if one of those is missing, I think you're missing a big part of self and what you can grow into potentially.
Yeah, I think about it too. Like sometimes I think about it through the lens of, we have like the intellectual, analytical part of us, which tends to be more masculine. And then we've got like this creative, emotional side of us, which tends to be more feminine. And you would think that by being raised by women, that creative, emotional part of us would be more present, because we would have seen it more and experienced it more. But I don't think that's the case. I think that women have a skewed understanding of how to raise men based off of how masculinity really is, portrayed and experienced, and all these kind of different things in culture and society. And so it's just all wonky in there. I know that it is for me. It's a constant thing that I'm trying to understand and put together. And I think it's obvious that it's kind of out of bounds in society.
Yeah. I mean, in my situation, they remained married, but I think due to my father being more absent, I think I have a very similar.
Did you have a close relationship with your mom?
Yeah, quite a bit. I remember in high school, on a Friday night, a lot of times, especially outside of football season, I mean, the two of us would go to dinner and things like that a lot. So I felt we had a pretty close relationship. I mean, it was also, as I got older, I'm trying to do that leave and cleave thing. I think it wasn't as great as I got older, but as a teenager, I felt we had a really close relationship. Yeah.
Let's talk about the Packers, and I thought it would be fun to, because I'm sure Ben will see this obviously and notice, you're probably going to pay for this, Joe. This was Joe's idea, by the way. Joe showed up and he said he wasn't going to be willing to sit by the hammer the entire episode, so he had to bring his Packer paraphernalia.
I had to do it.
But tell the story about, because you guys had a fun competition at the beginning of the year, at Jiu-Jitsu, right?
We did, unfortunately. So I'll back up a little bit. For many, many years, the Detroit Lions have been the butt of the NFC North.
Yeah.
And we have kicked them around for decades and decades and decades. Lately,
Been a little different.
it's been a little different. So Ben and I decided that we would have a little contest because, of course, they're both in the NFC North. They play twice a year, unless, of course, playoffs. But anyway, so for each match, we got a pink Power Rangers rash guard, and I think her name's Kimmy. I think that might be Kimmy's rash guard. And the loser had to wear it for 30 days. Well, unfortunately, the Detroit Lions won both games this year.
Oh my gosh.
I wore that thing for 60 days. It was painful. There's documented evidence, and it cannot happen again. Next year has to be different.
Yeah.
The Packers have to figure it out. I don't want to put that back on.
Well, from what I know about the Lions, I think you might be. Ben definitely sings the praise of that team and what they're doing. So
That new coach, what's his name? Dan Campbell or
yeah.
whatever? That guy's a rock star. And admittedly, they've been kicked around so many years. I was kind of cheering for the Lions.
Right, you got to. Like
Yeah.
when there's teams like that in sports that have that storied history of just being at the end of every list, right? At the bottom all the time.
Beat up for decades.
When it finally starts happening, like with the Red Sox and things like that and the Cubs and all those kind of different things. And you got to cheer for the underdog when they come back.
Absolutely. So I was definitely in their camp. Once the Packers were no longer in contention,
Yeah.
I was like, all right, let's see this. Let's go. You know, Matt Stafford was the Detroit Lions quarterback. He went out to LA, the Rams. I was cheering for them when they won the Super Bowl too. I'm like, because he had spent a lot of painful years in Detroit. I mean, maybe 14, some crazy number of painful seasons. So
I think Ben said that his wife was still wearing the Lions jersey or something. Like she was, there was, I can't remember for sure, but it was something like, yeah, because he was basically, yeah.
that happened. When was it? You might not. This is all NFC North stuff, so this might be
Yeah, football for me is
beyond, yeah.
way over my head.
But Jim McMahon was the quarterback that took the Chicago Bears to the Super Bowl in 1985.
Yeah.
Well, once that was over, the Packers picked him up as their backup quarterback for, I can't remember the years, but it was a Super Bowl year because they ended up going to the White House after the Super Bowl win. Jim McMahon wore his Bears jersey. I still hate that guy. He won, was on the Packers during a Super Bowl win, and he goes to the White House with a Bears jersey.
Showed up in his Bears jersey.
Unacceptable.
The Bears.
The Bears.
Thank you so much, Joe. I really appreciate it, man.
I love it. Thank you.
This has been really fun. I appreciate it.
Boom.
Everybody go subscribe to Brave Men Dare wherever you can find us and follow us on social media. And yeah, I was going to ask, actually, I'll ask you this when we're all done. But thank you, everybody, and we'll see you guys on the next episode.
Thanks.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Brave Men Dare. If you haven't yet, take a moment and subscribe to our channel, click that little notification bell, and check out some of these other clips. Last but not least, we'd really appreciate it if you sent this podcast to somebody else. Share it with a friend, share it with a buddy, and don't hesitate to reach out. The conversations that we have on the podcast are meant to inspire you, but also we want to hear what it brings up for you. Whether you share it in the comment, send us an email, or call us up. But thanks for being here, and we'll see you on the next episode.